The thread of the story, when I speak about Guantanamo, that thread of Guantanamo is lost over and over again, right? Students will say to me, well, not just students, sometimes other professors, audience members, people I meet in conversation. Oh, well, that got closed, didn't it? That got closed under Obama. Or, well, all those prisoners have been released, or, oh, the prisoners who are still there, well, they're terrorists anyway, aren't they? So it's okay. But Guantanamo, part of what I want to talk about today is how Guantanamo is a representative space, represents U.S. empire. It's also a working space. I mean, it does productive work. There's a particular kind of work that is done through and inscribed through Guantanamo to this day. It's filled with, right, and connected to current, past, present, perhaps future refugees, climate refugees. There are 40 remaining Guantanamo prisoners. There are third country national workers, military personnel that cycle through there continuously. And then the rest of us who are bound up and also implicated in this system that we allow to remain. It's invoked also, and here I think this is important and indicative of the kind of work that has been done, the ideological work that's been done at Guantanamo. Whenever I hear that phrase, lock her up, as we heard 4 years ago, lock him up, as we hear today, this is a call, right, to militarization. It's a call to the carceral system, and it's a call to this kind of ability, right, to take people that we are that we disagree with, right, and we have heard it, unfortunately, right, from the left and from the right. It's a casual kind of proposal, right, just to dispense with one's enemies. And it's good to be here and to be talking within this human rights kind of frame. And my work, emanates from a concern for fellow human beings, for their status legally, for their rights, and for our collective future, which has been really shaky this week, right? But I concur, and Dr. Miller said it so well and spoke so beautifully and powerfully to this. Well, all of you have in some way or another, right? But Yale professor of law, Munir Ahmed, emphasized early on that when we talked about Guantanamo, and when we sought to place it in a human rights frame, that we had an automatic problem. And what was that problem? That problem was that the prisoners had been removed from the frame of human beings, right? He says, and this is a quote from him, Guantanamo has been a project of dehumanization in the literal sense, right? It has sought to expel the prisoners, consistently referred to as terrorists, from our shared understanding of what it meant to be human, so as to permit, if not necessitate, physical and mental treatment, albeit in this context, right, this produced context of interrogation, abhorrent to human beings. This has been accomplished through 3 forms of erasure of the human: a cultural erasure through the creation of this terrorist narrative, legal erasure through formalistic legerdemain, right? And you remember that people had to go to court, right, just for their rights of habeas corpus, for example, and then through physical erasure, through the unmaking of human beings through torture, right? Something that we thought, right, or wanted to claim about ourselves, right, in the United States is that we are not going to do this, right? We don't do this, but of course we do. We have done it. So this logic, the whole logistics and language of human rights, right? We have to be, if we're not attentive to it, if we don't support the systems through legal mechanisms, right? And if we don't have buy-in, then the risk, right, which we have seen happen over and over again, the risk of using the language of human rights, but not being able to have the structures be, reinforced, right, at all levels, is that we run the risk that the language is meaningless. And this has been a frustration personally for me in this work since the beginning of the global war on terror, right, is that the language and the realities just don't match up, right? One of the things that happens at Guantanamo is that we get the production of two different kinds of bodies. We have those bodies that are the good military bodies that are often framed and racialized as white, although the military is not, right? And the racialization of Muslims, right? Those brown Arab Muslims. And so the religion itself becomes racialized in a particular way. And the rituals also that happened and continue to happen. So a young man who I interviewed was one of the first guards to serve at Guantanamo. And he was 17. His grandparents signed off for him to join the military. Parents were not in the picture. He was doing it as a way to make a living, and he signed up for a bonus, right, to get it was a military signing bonus, and if he agreed to go into the military police, then he would get better pay at that time. So he signs up, and he soon hears that he's going to this place called Guantanamo. He's never heard of this place. This is in 2002, and the first thing is that they're taken as a unit. They're told they're going to be transitioned into guards. And so they're taken to a space outside of New York City where they train in a prison, a model prison. They're driven on buses to go see the site of the Twin Towers. And they're told, you're going to the place where the people who did this are imprisoned, and you're going to be in charge of them, which of course was an utter lie, right? The people who did it were dead. They had died in the, and most of the men that they were going to meet were in fact not involved in 9/11. And then there's a whole ritual. So their group goes down, they're put in charge of these prisoners. They're young men. They're not really, they've had, a very short time of being trained as prison guards. And that anger, that they felt as Americans who, had just been to this site and witnessed this, was taken out directly on the prisoners, right? Through rituals of violence, through beating, through escorts, softening people up for interrogation, torture, right? So what I want to say, in particular about what we're headed into is that, maybe a new administration, is that, in the US, there's this privilege, right, around, you're white, cisgender, voter, and it would be, you're privileged if you can say it doesn't matter. But what I read yesterday from Moazzam Beg, and I wrote to him and said, hey, can I use this, Moazzam? And he said, yes. Moazzam was imprisoned at Guantanamo for 5 years, and he posted yesterday, Trump or Biden, may the USA get the man it deserves, but I won't congratulate either. I just pray the world, especially the Muslim world, is spared from your, meaning the US, right? Spared from your invasions, bombings, drones, torture centers, propping up of dictators, and support for occupiers. And that was his post on November 5th. And I thought, yes, for him, right, and for many Muslims around the world who have suffered at the hands of US imperialism and who have not had necessarily mechanisms of justice available to them, right, to redress, that there's a real cynicism about whether it matters for them, because will the militarization and the violence roll on, and will they suffer it